Hey, I'm William. I hope you're doing well. I'm a writer. This is my YouTube channel. And in this video, I'll be discussing Cormac McCarthy's All the Pretty Horses, why you should read it, and what makes it great. I won't be giving away anything that happens in the middle or towards the end of the novel. I really want you to experience that for yourself. When I went into this novel blind, I picked it off a shelf in a Barnes & Noble when I was about 19 years old. I had a really immediately profound experience reading this thing. And it's no surprise why. This is, at its core, something of a hero's journey. It's about a young man who's about 16 at the beginning of the novel, whose name is John Grady Cole. He's the last in the line, a long line of ranchers from Texas, and that way of life is disappearing. Automobiles are becoming widely adopted, and his family's way of life is disappearing. And so he has to forge a new way ahead. If you're new to college like I was, or going through any other sort of major transition in life and you're unsure of the path you should take ahead, I think this novel will hit pretty hard. But why should you read it? And perhaps more importantly, why should you read this Cormac McCarthy novel as opposed to some of his other popular novels like The Road or Blood Meridian? This novel is unique in that it's really accessible. It's not written so poetically and so densely that it's kind of hard to get through if you're not already familiar with his style. Novels that I would put in that category are Suttree and Blood Meridian, also The Passenger as well. I think All the Pretty Horses has probably the widest appeal of all of his books. First of all, there are women, and in a lot of his novels, women aren't prominent characters. This is, on one level, a love story. It's certainly romantic. And like all other Cormac McCarthy novels, the beauty of the prose is helping us to access the sheer darkness and terror of the themes and the contents within. This is the first novel in a trilogy, but I don't think it's helpful for you to think of it as book one of three, and I'll explain why. This is very much so a self-contained story. All the Pretty Horses could easily exist without The Crossing or Cities of the Plain, which are the two novels that come afterward. And in The Crossing, the second installment of the trilogy, there's an entirely different set of characters. So it certainly shares a lot of themes in common with All the Pretty Horses, but it's a completely independent work. All the Pretty Horses is a very approachable length. It's only about 300 pages. There's a lot of wry humor throughout, which is a function of the main characters being about 16 years old. And the whole thing reads like a very philosophical adventure. Certainly there's a lot of darkness in it. Don't go into this expecting a Disney type of story arc and ending. I'll leave it at that for the specifics about the plot. If you go into it with an open mind, I can almost guarantee that you'll learn something not only about the American West, but about yourself. Of all the novels I own, I think I've written in this one the most. This is my original copy of it. The entire first section is just completely marked up at this point. If you're going through a rather challenging time in life, I can personally attest that this novel will meet you right where you are, and it'll give you some beautiful and great things to think about. Dark, yeah, but also beautiful and great. But the main reason why you should read Cormac McCarthy's writing is that it is inextricably linked to a lot of the great epics and stories that have come before it, including the Bible and the Iliad. The violence and the poetry and the meter of how the sentences flow, it all harkens back to great texts like that. You're going to constantly be stopping after you've just read one of the greatest sentences you've ever read in your life and wonder how one person could have advanced language so far as to have written what you just read. That probably sounds dramatic, but I can guarantee you that there are a lot of Cormac McCarthy fans out there, like myself, who have had that exact same experience dozens of times over. This is a novel that's not only worth reading, it's worth rereading, and I think you'll get a lot out of it at different times in your life. If you're a really similar age to the main characters, I think this novel is gonna pack one hell of a punch. And if you're a little older, I'm personally now in my late 20s, you'll have a very different perspective on it. I don't want to give too much away about kind of what's going on with the family around John Grady Cole, but something that you learn right at the very beginning is that his parents are going through a divorce. I've found on rereads that I'm thinking a lot more about his mother as she's absent throughout the novel, as well as his father and the decisions that both of them made, both to get together and stay on the ranch, and also the decisions that they've made going forward in their lives. Along with John Grady, who's the main character, is his cousin, Rollins. The two of them are central to the novel, and they meet a hilarious character who I'll have trouble explaining here briefly, called Blevins. Blevins is an extremely unique character in all of literature, and he makes, especially the early part of the novel, extremely dynamic. I'll leave it at that. Don't be discouraged if there are a few discursions in the novel that last 5, 10, 15 pages where you're struggling a little bit to keep up with what they're talking about, or you're following just fine, but you're a little bored. There's a certain depth and weight to this novel, especially as it pertains to themes like violence, loss, love, and what to do in the face of the absurd unknown, for lack of a better term. And all of the asides, I promise you, are enriching what you're reading. By the end of the novel, a lot of them will come together and sort of rhyme with each other thematically in ways that aren't immediately apparent as you're coming across them for the first time. The narration is pretty opaque, especially at the beginning of the novel, but what is unsaid is in a lot of ways powering the material forward. You don't have to look far to get a taste of what he can do with language. I'll read you the first paragraph of the novel. The candle flame and the image of the candle flame caught in the pier glass twisted and righted when he entered the hall, and again when he shut the door. He took off his hat and came slowly forward. The floorboards creaked under his boots. In his black suit, he stood in the dark glass where the lilies leaned so palely from their wasted cut-glass vase. Along the cold hallway behind him hung the portraits of forebears, only dimly known to him, all framed in glass and dimly lit above the narrow wainscoting. He looked down at the guttered candle stub. He pressed his thumbprint into the warm wax pooled on the oak veneer. Lastly, he looked at the face, so caved and drawn among the folds of funeral cloth, the yellowed mustache, the eyelids paper thin. That was not sleeping. That was not sleeping. And he's looking at his dead grandfather there. It helps to know a little bit of Spanish. There's a lot of untranslated Spanish throughout the novel, but it won't really severely impact your understanding of the meaning of what's going on if you don't know much Spanish and need to stick to your English. This is a novel that I'm positive I'll revisit again and probably again throughout the rest of my life. I hope you pick it up. I hope you love it, or at least like it. Thank you for watching. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Take it easy, and I'll see you in the next one.